The train came back into the station wrong. Too fast, and then a stop so hard it threw everyone forward against the restraints. And over the roar of the ride, I heard the screaming start. Not the fun kind, the other kind. And when I looked up from the booth, the whole midway had gone still, and every face was turned toward me. I was the operator. My hand was on the console, my booth, my dispatch, and a train full of families had just come and heard, and every person on that midway had already decided the answer before anyone said a word. The operator sent it. Her hand was on the button, so it was her button that hurt them. 12 years I ran rides at that park. 12 years, and nobody had ever been hurt on a ride I was operating, because that is the entire job. The operator is the last person between a fault and a family, and I treated it that way every single dispatch. Safety was not a poster on the wall to me. It was the whole thing I sold. It was the only thing I ever sold. And in the time it takes a train to come back into a station, I was the operator who heard a load of guests. I want to tell you about the man who put me there. His name was Corwin, and he was the park operations manager. Corwin ran the day. On the busiest day of the season, with the flagship coaster the biggest draw in the park and the line stretched back through 3 switchbacks, the ride's control system threw a fault. A brake zone sensor fault, the kind the procedure has exactly one answer for. You stop the ride, you lock it out, and you do not run another train until maintenance clears it. So I hit the e-stop. I held the train in the station. I called it in, and I did not dispatch. And Corwin came to my booth, and what he saw was not a safety fault. What he saw was the flagship ride going down for hours on the highest revenue day of the year, and a line of thousands of people about to be told the big coaster was closed. And he made a different call. He took his supervisor key, and he overrode the fault, and he force reset the ride, and he told me to keep it running. And I want to be honest with you, the way I've had to be honest with myself since. I did not dispatch that train. The override was his, the reset was his, and the next train went out under his key, on his order, against a lockout I had already called. And somewhere out on that circuit, the thing the sensor had been trying to warn us about happened, and a train came back into the station hard enough to hurt the people in it. And the second it was over, Corwin's story was already made. He did not tell them he'd overridden a safety fault to keep the ride running for the money. He told the park, and then he told the state ride inspector, that the operator dispatched a train with a known fault and ignored the lockout. He pointed at the booth. At me. Here is what that costs an operator like me. It is not just the job. That certification, the thing that lets me run a ride at all, a finding that I dispatched a faulted ride and hurt guests in it, and no park hires an operator with that on her name. 12 years, and running rides is the work I know. And guests were hurt, and when guests are hurt on a ride you dispatched, the word negligence gets said by people with badges, and it does not stay a safety review for long. I drove home that night a 38-year-old woman who'd been told she might never run a ride again and might be charged for a train I had refused to send. My daughter asked me why I was shaking at the kitchen table. I told her some people got hurt at work and somebody said it was my fault and that I was going to prove whose key actually sent that train. I said it out loud, so I'd have to go do it. The young maintenance tech had been right there. He'd watched me e-stop and heard me call the lockout and seen Corwin override it with his key. But he was 20 and new and scared, because crossing an operations manager is how a young tech stops getting shifts, and I wasn't going to hang a scared kid's job against a manager's as my whole defense. This wasn't going to get fixed by whose story the park wanted to believe. It was going to get fixed by the one thing in that booth that logs every fault and every override and doesn't care who the operations manager is. Because here is what Corwin forgot, the way these people always forget the one thing. That ride runs on a safety controller, a PLC, and it writes down everything. Every fault it throws, every e-stop, every reset, every manual override, and every dispatch, all of it logged, stamped to the second, and tied to the key or the credential that did it. The controller does not care about the line or the revenue, and it does not care that Corwin is the manager. It just records what the ride did and whose key made it do it. So through the state ride safety investigation, and with me pushing for the records, we pulled the control system event log, the maintenance history, the booth camera, and the log showed the brake zone fault enunciating. It showed my e-stop. It showed that I did not dispatch. The train sat held in the station. And then it showed the fault being overridden and the ride force reset under Corwin's supervisor key, not mine, and the dispatch that sent the train going out after his override, against the lockout I'd called. The maintenance log showed the fault was real and uncleared. And the booth camera showed Corwin at my console with his key. The ride had recorded the whole thing. And it said the operator stopped it, and the manager overrode it and sent it. They held the ride safety review in a conference room at the park offices. The general manager was there. The state ride inspector was there. Corwin was there, in a park polo, still sure that a manager's word beats an operator's, the way it usually does. My rep put the control system event log up on a timeline, and we didn't argue. We walked the 15 minutes. The fault. My e-stop. The override, under Corwin's key. The forced reset. The state inspector asked Corwin one question. He asked him whose supervisor key had overridden the brake zone fault and reset the ride. Corwin didn't have an answer, because it was in the log under his own credential. The young tech, hearing the controller back him up, said out loud that Corwin had ordered the override. And I watched it land on Corwin in front of the general manager and the state inspector, the moment he understood that the ride had been recording the entire time, and the controller doesn't feel the pressure of a long line and doesn't care who runs the park. They cleared me completely. My certification was never really in danger once the event log was in front of the inspector. The record had me stopping the ride and refusing to dispatch. I went back to the booth with the back pay and a finding on the record that the operator acted correctly and the injuries were caused by a manager overriding a safety fault. The park locked down the thing that let it happen. Nobody can override a ride fault on a single key anymore. It takes 2 authorized signatures, and it throws a logged lockout the whole park can see. The young tech kept his job and his shifts, and nobody ever put his name near it. I made sure. And Corwin was fired, referred to the state for overriding a safety fault, and made to answer for the families he hurt, the exact thing he'd tried to hang on me. I still run that coaster. Same booth, same console, and I still hit the e-stop the instant the ride tells me something's wrong, and I do not dispatch for anybody, no matter how long the line or who's standing in my booth with the key. And sometimes on a full day, the train coming back in smooth and everybody laughing the way they're supposed to. I think about how the whole time they were calling me the operator who hurt those families. The thing that was going to save me was the ride itself, logging every fault and every override, keeping the record right there under my hand. I built 12 years on nobody getting hurt on my ride. It turned out the ride had been keeping that record right alongside me the whole time.